Welcome to Prediction Market Movers. My name is Chris Gerlacher. I've been covering prediction markets since 2021, and we are interviewing a new mover and shaker in the space in the prediction market industry every week on this show. If you like what you hear today, like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel at Prediction News, and follow us on X at Prediction News. Now, today's a real treat. I've got Kalshi's former head of operations, Noah Sternig, with us here today. Noah's here to peel back the curtain a little bit on Kalshi and talk about what it's like to work as a CFTC regulated exchange and give some thoughts on the industry more broadly outside of the regulated space as well. So, Noah, thanks so much for being here. I want to start with what drew you to prediction markets originally?
Sure. And first of all, thanks, Chris, for having me. Very excited to talk about prediction markets, something I'm obviously very passionate about. What drew me first to prediction markets specifically? So I was actually working in investment banking prior to working at Kalshi, and like most Americans, had some student debt, had some federal student loans, and I had already traded on Kalshi a little bit in like their inflation markets and some of their other economic markets. I was very interested in economics and had a background in economics. Ended up placing a really big hedge actually on student loan forgiveness using Kalshi to effectively reduce my exposure to the Supreme Court decision on if my $10,000 would disappear into the abyss or not. And that was my really big light bulb moment, which switched from this place where I can make some fun side money trading on what I thought inflation would be or what I thought the Fed might do, to a place that I was actually able to hedge my own personal life and personal risk away in something that I felt like I had no control over, which I think a lot of people think, right? There's a lot of really big decisions that happen above us, specifically in politics, that affect our everyday lives that we're not actually able to influence. And with the Supreme Court, we're not even able to vote on. So there's a very personal connection for me immediately. And that was like my really big light bulb moment. I changed the situation from, the variance of ending with $0 or ending with $10,000 in my pocket to just guaranteeing that I would have $5,000 independent of what anyone's decision was in the Supreme Court.
So the hedging gave you agency in your student loan forgiveness situation.
Exactly. Yeah. And it wasn't, I didn't have any, I didn't really have strong conviction on which way the Supreme Court would go. I mostly just had the feeling that, this was a very uncertain decision. My personal opinions were like very mixed on if it should even happen or not. But all of that set aside, I, mostly just made that hedging trade to really change something that I think obviously that sum of money, maybe is a lot to some, maybe is little to some, but in that moment, gave me the agency you mentioned, which was a very freeing feeling and a very, again, that really big light bulb moment where I realized that prediction markets are more than just another way to speculate.
Okay. And how'd you end up at Kalshi?
Yeah. So the way I ended up at Kalshi, I started actually talking to some people at the company. They're obviously in early stages, but growing, seemed to be the leader in the space, specifically the CFTC regulated space. That was really appealing to me. I'd only traded on Kalshi because, I felt like the platform was very safe, very secure. I liked the feeling of knowing that my money was being held in some sort of clearinghouse, which was regulated and supervised. And just knowing that these determinations were overseen by the CFTC and, I had this agency that I trusted that could come in and help me out if something went wrong was a really good feeling for me. And that's what, attracted me to Kalshi. So before Kalshi, I'd also been on Predict It, traded on politics. That was something very fun to me. But obviously they had very low limits at the time. There was sort of a liquidity crisis with how many people could concurrently be in a market. And a lot of reasons why I felt like Predict It was very hamstrung, even though they were one of the original movers, at least in my life, for prediction markets.
Yeah. Oh yeah. A lot of people get their start on Predict It in this space.
Yeah. It makes sense. They were, they had a really, they still have a very useful website, a lot of really great things going on there. And it was a really cool, it was another aha moment where instead of, watching the news on election night, I could be on this really cool website that always seemed to be a lot faster than whatever news anchor was telling me.
Right. And then how'd you let me get into Kalshi's mission. So you end up at Kalshi, you're in contact with the company. Why is Kalshi's mission to have a market on everything so important?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I think like the idea that there should be a market on everything is very important for Kalshi's mission, mostly because like there are an infinite amount of things that people can hedge, an infinite amount of things that people can speculate on, and everyone cares about different things uniquely. And it's very easy to see like Kalshi trends like in this sports space, and lots of people care about sports. There's a lot of affinity with the sport teams that are close by to my home, maybe where you went to college. And there's also like very good affinity with people that are in economics or financials, and like the Fed is like an important thing that makes sense to them. But I think when you like limit yourself to those bounds, you're not actually like fully embracing the full potential of what prediction markets can be. And a lot of people just haven't really decided to take the risk yet, or take the jump to be offering markets on like culture and weather and climate and these other things that are like also extremely involved in our lives, and even more involved in the lives of others. Like I personally like am not extremely passionate about culture markets, because like I just don't I don't really follow a lot of news. Like I don't really follow a lot of artists. I don't watch a lot of movies. But I know lots of people that are like, that's like the center of their life. Those are like the really the things that they're very passionate about. So I think like it's really important that a platform can cater to everyone, and can have the market that appeases the movie head, the market that appeases the tornado hunter or storm chaser, and the market that can help the crypto bro hedge his Bitcoin holdings.
Right. And the more it seems like, at least from the outside, the more niche the market you can offer, it's almost it almost seems like a point of pride, to be able to hedge on increasingly narrow risks for different retail traders. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I think I think like in prediction markets, it's really easy to launch. Like everyone should have a market on what the Fed will do, but that's a really easy market to make. Pricing already exists. There's lots of opinions on either side. The rules are, fairly trivial and easy to write. These are things that I think are like, they exist, and lots of people are interested in them. And they also seem like very obvious things to trade on. I think there is definitely a sense of pride at Kalshi in being able to list markets on things that people wouldn't expect to be able to trade on, because it's truly showing the, it's testing the limits and raising the ceiling for what a prediction market can actually be.
Okay. Yeah, testing the limits is so you're just saying how far within reason you're able to cater to largely retail traders, right? I mean, this is primarily a retail product, even though you welcome institutional money, right?
Yeah. I mean, lots of people trade on Kalshi. It's very accessible to the public. I think like the public actually has a really public and retail, even sophisticated retail has like a very unique role on Kalshi, in that like they can use the API, they can programmatically trade, they can also use limit orders and view the order book if they choose, but they can hop on the app and just make quick orders and speculate fast. So there's really a home for everyone at Kalshi. When I say push the limits, I more so mean like push the limits of not like the legal limits or the limits of like what people think is feasible to market make, but rather like push the limits of like what people thought you ever would want to trade on. Okay. There's just lots of things that like, I think mention markets are a good example. Like 5 years ago, I think that would have seemed pretty crazy. Like you're going to trade on what people say during a press conference. And now it's a really cool, unique category in the prediction market space that sort of has this cult following.
And they're definitely some of the most popular markets that we cover, especially, like the presidential, vice presidential debates. I mean, I cover those live, and those are always just really hot.
Yeah, they're really exciting markets. I think lots of people there are people that have like very strong opinions on what will be said and how they'll be said. There are people who make, who algorithmically trade these markets. And I think it's really cool to see that like you really can forecast anything, and people can really find an edge in almost anything.
Oh yeah. Operationally, what goes into launching a new market? Because it does seem like they seem pretty easy to launch once you have the process down.
Yeah, I think the part of what Kalshi does really well is they make it, they make their job look easy. And I think like anyone that does a good job at what they're doing will make what they do look easy, right? Like, I watch a professional basketball game and I see someone, I think I could do that. It's very clear that I can't, but they're just so good at what they do that it appears to be easy on the surface. So I think, when launching a market, it is a pretty complex process. There's a lot of things you have to consider and a lot of things that Kalshi has to consider. Like being CFTC regulated, they need to consider the legality of the market. They need to consider it, being in the best interest. We also need to make sure like there's a contract that's been certified with the CFTC that properly fits the market we're trying to create. So, like Kalshi has a lot of contracts that are now filed and approved and in a very great state. And with those contracts, there are lots of different ways that you can, you can use those contracts. Like there's a contract for mention markets, and that contract can be used for pretty much any mention market now. It doesn't require a filing when we decide that we want to do a mention market on a different TV show or a different live event or a different public leader. These are all things that can be done using the existing contract. Once you have the contract in place, though, it's obviously like very important to continue to understand and hopefully evolve the contract. So recognizing if there's a hole, recognizing if there's some sort of like rules edge case that needs to be addressed. Maybe there's something that just isn't like you expect the market to maybe not settle the way that like the general public or the spirit of the market would settle. Those are things that I think Kalshi's done a really great job of iterating on.
Yeah. How is there just a team of rule writers who, gets really detailed and down into the minutiae of the language to set clear resolution criteria?
Yeah. There's an entire team at Kalshi dedicated to creating markets, and like the team can be, siloed into like this team that's very concerned with rules. And, it's very important to have like very robust rules. They help with like writing the contracts, the filings, et cetera. There's also like a team that is, very dedicated to like finding new market ideas and actually like putting these markets on the website. And, if people are requesting to add certain things to a market to like continue to iterate and grow in that market. So yeah, I think Kalshi has like, there's a really big emphasis on this markets team that, is a very strong team of people that specialize in different, facets of the market creation pipeline or timeline that is, and are able to create like this really cool product that, to the front end user seems like very easy and quick to do, but on the back end is like this very complicated, hard task that ends up being done very well.
Right. And then once you have, going back to those filings, is that how you get the batch of markets out very quickly? So I'm thinking after the presidential election, or after you were cleared to offer the congressional control markets, the election contract space just exploded with, different margins, electoral college. Is that because the filings give you some broad leeway in the specific contracts that you can offer?
Yeah, that's definitely part of it. I think like, you don't need to, like for the election, for example, you don't need to file a contract for who will win Wisconsin, and then also a separate one for who will win Illinois in the presidential election. The contract should be structured like who will win state. And in a way, like that contract does a lot of heavy lifting. And we've written one contract that can be used for 50 markets. And in 4 years, it'll be used for 50 more markets.
Right.
And that's like it's a really cool, powerful thing. Specifically, like how Kalshi was, able to like push out so many of those markets was just some really strong preparation. So, having all of the contracts ready, having the market structure ready, the expectation of the release cadence, all of the rules edge cases that we wanted to account for or not account for. And yeah, being like very prepared in that instance for, good news or bad news and what that looked like for Kalshi was really important in, pushing these markets very fast. Right. I think we saw like a very short window of opportunity. The election's coming up. There's a lot of evolving news that's likely to change, the odds of some of these events. it's very important that, by any means necessary, these markets were made and brought to the public.
Right. You mentioned the rules edge cases. How many of those do you anticipate ahead of time? And, are there any that you have to respond to in real time, or are they pretty clear up front?
Yeah, I mean, I think like another thing that's like really important is to have people that can proactively, find rules edge cases, because it's obviously, it's a very good thing when you've thought of an edge case, properly address the edge case, and then the edge case, like, maybe ends up occurring. That's a really great feeling. It means that you did your due diligence. It means that you made sure that you're fully in the clear. Now, that's a perfect world. Obviously, like, there will be edge cases that you don't think of. There will be an edge case that not a single person could have ever thought of, and you can't really blame yourself for it. I think the really important thing is when those happen, recognizing if that edge case affects any other markets on Kalshi, live or not live, and then properly filing amendments with the CFTC to make sure that you address those going forward. Okay. So like two very important things is like recognizing a mistake, figuring out where that mistake or that oversight could affect other markets, and then ensuring that the mistake is never made twice. Right. And by that, Kalshi's been able to learn really fast.
Right. How much leeway does the CFTC give you? Because, obviously there are, the CFTC has the power to investigate and fine. It also has the leeway to let you address problems. What does that relationship look like? How does the CFTC make some of those decisions with Kalshi, for example?
Sure. So, in my capacity, actually, I wasn't, I didn't particularly interact too heavily with the CFTC. Mm-hmm. But, it's my understanding that, they're obviously like they're a very strong agency that, obviously enforces rules and is very interested in consumer protection. And if there ever a case in which like Kalshi wasn't protecting its traders or users, I have no doubt that the CFTC like would intervene and would make things right for people. Mm-hmm. It's obviously like their reputation and the reputation of the licenses that they issue that's on the line there. And also it's just in their best interest to protect the public. That being said, I think like there are some things that like can be clarified within reason. There are some instances where, if a really big edge case happens that didn't occur, like Kalshi has historically, taken on some losses or paid out of pocket to both sides, whether that looks like a full payout or a refund for position costs, including fees. There's many instances in which instead of trying to like get out of a tough situation, Kalshi decides that this is a time when they should be fronting the bill and when they should be covering the sides for both traders because of a market creation oversight. But, I think part of this is like, I don't think Kalshi does this out of fear of like the CFTC taking some sort of enforcement. That's, I think the bigger thing on the table here is ensuring that like Kalshi has this reputation of doing right by its traders, making timely and very accurate determinations, and when clarifications happen to correctly interpret the written contract that people have been trading on.
Okay. Do you have an example of that comes to mind where Kalshi paid out to traders and the CFTC just let it go since the traders were made whole?
I can't think of anything specifically. It's something that happens like very infrequently. There's certainly like, we're very public about it. We'll email all the traders in the market, the people affected and not affected. We'll also like communicate consistently on Discord and other public channels about like what the decision was and what will be happening. But in the past like few months, I can't actually think of like a very specific one.
Right. Let me ask about KYC. How do you actually take a step back? What is considered insider trading on a CFTC regulated platform? Because I know the CFTC has a different set of criteria for insider trading than the SEC.
Sure. Yeah, I think, the CFTC is like, might be a lot more loose on what that is. From the perspective of Kalshi, it's like, it's like people that are associated with the source agency. And those are like, Kalshi's insider trading rules are specifically applied to like each contract that's filed. So, I think like a high level example is like, if you're trading on pro football, you can't be a team owner. You obviously can't be a player. You can't be a coach. You can't be a doctor or a trainer.
Don't want somebody who can affect the outcome of the contract directly.
Yeah, for the most part. Yeah, you don't. Yeah, we obviously don't want people that can affect outcomes of contracts trading on them. Now, that can be like tough. There's obvious like if I cheer louder, maybe maybe the quarterback won't be able to hear it, and then he'll throw an interception.
Yeah. There are lines to be drawn for sure.
Yeah. There's a line to be drawn, right? Like I think another quick example of this is like there's markets on like the top song on Spotify each day. Me listening to music. Well, it technically does influence like Spotify charts. It's in such a small way, in such a a non-manipulative way that it's not actually material or needed to be enforced.
Yeah, you're not sending Sabrina Carpenter all the way to the top by herself.
Exactly. Yeah, maybe me and my friends, but not me alone.
Right. So how do you maintain, especially in the political markets, how do you maintain the KYC guardrails with the rapid expansion across states? Because the contract, I know you can, let you offer the contract and operationally they're the same, but there are also, their own versions of Kyle Langford's in North Carolina, in Michigan, people who are running for office who aren't running in a different state. So, how do you catch some of those at scale as well?
Yeah. So I think the main thing is like, Kalshi, Kalshi has KYC. Kalshi does like check and verify the information of people that apply for the exchange. When you open a Kalshi account, it looks similar to opening an account on like Robinhood or another stock exchange. So you can expect like the protections and the limitations and like Kalshi's understanding of who's trading on Kalshi to be similar to that of stock exchanges, which are very heavily protected and make sure to weed out as much insider trading as possible. Kalshi also has like some other mechanisms. There are some, there's some exposure limits on markets that can be triggered and cause Kalshi to potentially review like the holders of a contract. But yeah, I mean, part of being a CFTC regulated exchange is having a unit at Kalshi that is fully dedicated to surveillance and specifically making sure that trades are being made in good faith. Trades are not being made by people who can influence outcomes or have some insider information of the outcome. I think that's like a really important part about trading on Kalshi is that you have this peace of mind that your counterparty, although they might be smarter than you, it's not because they're influencing the outcome or have some inside knowledge on the outcome.
Well, let's zoom out from Kalshi to the bigger prediction market industry because it does seem like it has this new life, especially after sports and the presidential election. What are some things that the prediction market industry broadly do you think what is the industry finally bringing to customers and users of prediction markets and businesses that that's just been missing for a long time without the latest wave of startups?
Yeah, I think what's been really missing has been liquidity and like high interest, and because there are a lot more people trading on Kalshi, institutions and even prediction markets, institutions are like becoming more interested in these products. Prediction markets are being talked about more in the news, and this is sort of like the snowball effect, right? The more people that join Kalshi, the more likely that I'll be willing to spend time to market make on Kalshi. And the more people that trade on Kalshi, the more likely they are to put up limit orders and create more liquid, more accurate, and more tight predictions. Prediction markets are only accurate and only work if there are a lot of participants or a lot of money. And what's funny is actually like it kind of has to be both, right? Like $1 billion between two people can just be someone hedging and the pricing can be very off. 1 billion people with 1 cent each, they probably don't care. But 1 million people with $100 is where it becomes like very powerful. And those are the instances in which, I think prediction markets are starting to really pick up steam. Is that, when you go on Kalshi, even these like very edge long tail markets are liquid. And a lot of these big markets are liquid to the point in which like it makes sense for large scale companies and institutions to trade on Kalshi and actually hedge away risk or take like large speculative positions. It also makes sense and it's very user friendly in that like I can place a trade for like a reasonable size and I'm not slipping through this extremely thin order book. So I think like liquidity has been missing, and now the liquidity is officially here, and the liquidity is it's continuing to pick up, and like places are starting to not have to incentivize as much for people to trade. And it's a really great thing for the entire ecosystem, in my opinion.
Yeah. Are there any features you're seeing in maybe the crypto space or some of the newer prediction market startups that at maturity could find themselves in a regulated space, or some feature or product you think is working on solving a problem for other prediction market companies?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's like a lot of problems still, and there's a lot of things that need to be worked on. I think like people that are working on creating oracles is very interesting, right? Like finding actual source of truth is really cool. I think it'll be, as there are more exchanges that come to light, it'll be very important that they all resolve in the same direction. If exchanges are resolving in different directions that are supposed to have the same terms, that could like really cause like liquidity to become thin and become very spread out. It's like important that arbitrages exist. Because arbitrages are what make these like mature financial markets that we already think of as being very liquid. So yeah, I think a really important thing will be like reliable determinations, universally accepted and used oracles. Maybe they're not necessarily the source of truth, but they're looked at as being like a very reputable source for determining markets.
Right. They're reliable market resolution processes.
Yep. Yeah. There's just right now, at least in this space, like there's still a lot of 99% of things go completely fine, and everyone agrees. But in that 1%, I think those are like going to still be like some of the really hard issues that need to be solved. And once that issue is solved, I think someone can and will do it. Once that issue is solved, the confidence in prediction markets will be much stronger. People will be a lot more willing to put and use meaningful amounts of money on these exchanges, and the institutional adoption will certainly follow.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's an exciting and growing space. So Noah, thanks so much for being here. This was a great, pullback on Kalshi, and I know people can follow you on X if they want to. What's next? I don't know. What's next for your plans in the industry? What you got going on?
Just going to be, talking about prediction markets, sharing some of my insights, trying to cover a lot of the exchanges that we're already used to and some of the new places that are popping up. But yeah, just plan on staying like very involved and continue to talk about this. Obviously, I care about prediction markets a lot, so I plan on these next few months being some of the most fun months for me personally and the entire prediction market community.
Yeah, well, enjoy the media circuit. I've seen you on panels and you're good at them, so this was fun. Thanks again for being here. If you like, yeah. Now, if you like, sorry about that. If you like this video, and subscribe to our YouTube channel at Prediction News. Follow us on X at Prediction News, and don't forget to follow Noah on X as well. You really should see some of his industry thoughts that you see throughout the week and throughout the day. So, Noah, thanks again for being here.
No problem. Thanks for having me.